3-5%. Now, before we convert 0.02 to a percent, I want to kind of show you the process. All right. So, since we know, that 100 times 1 over 100 equals 1, because it's 100 times the 1 and the 1 times 100 gives you 100 over 100, because you know when you multiply fractions, you just multiply straight across, and any whole number can be written as a fraction. So, like I wrote earlier, we know that 100 times 1 over 100 equals 1. All right. Now, this 1 can also be written as, say, 1%. The 1 over 100 equals 1%. That's exactly what this fraction means, is 1%. Because if you remember, centi is the prefix for 100. You can think of a century as 100 years, or a centimeter is 1/100th of a meter. This literally means whatever number up here, percent. If this was a 5, it'd be 5%. All right. So if we wanted to write 0.2 as a percent, meaning per 100, what we could do is we could take the 0.2, multiply it by 100 times 1 over 100. Okay, so the 0.2 times 100, of course, gives you 20, because when you multiply them by 100, you move your decimal point 2 places over, and this is times 1 over 100. Well, 20 times 1 over 100, remember you multiply straight across, and this can be written as a fraction. So this is literally 20 over 100, which is 20 per 100, or 20%. So 0.2 written as a percent is 20%. All right, 20%. Now there's also a shortcut method, and I'm going to show you in a moment for finding percents if you don't already know it, but I'm going to show it to you. All right, let's write 35% as a decimal. All right, how are we going to write 35% as a decimal? Well, if you remember, this is 35%, so this can be written as 35 over 100. All right, 35%. So 35 over 100, when you divide by 100, you take your decimal point, which is here, move it 2 places to the left. So this would be 0.35 written as a decimal. All right, be 0.35 written as a decimal. All right, so as you can see, our decimal point would have been here, so we moved it 2 places to the left. All right, so now let's look at this problem. It says write 0.5% as a decimal. Now, here's the shortcut. All right, you remember how up here, all it really looks like is we took our decimal point and moved it 2 places to the left? When you are converting from a percent to a decimal, if you always think about it as my number is going to get smaller, you'll remember which way to move your decimal point. So you would move this decimal point 2 places to the left. So 0.5% written as a decimal would equal 0. When you move it 2 places, you're going to have to add an extra 0 in there. So it would be 0.005 written as a decimal. Half a percent, 0.005. Now, if we go back to our previous problem that we had, write 0.2 as a percent. All right, if you remember that going to a percent from a decimal, your number is going to get larger. It'll help you remember which way to move your decimal point. So if you want to go to a percent, you move your decimal point 2 places to the left. So that means that 0.2 would equal 20%. because you take your 0.2, move your decimal places 2 to the left, so it would go from here to here, giving you 20, and that would be 20%. All right, does that make sense? Converting from a decimal to a percentage, you move your decimal point, move decimal point 2 places to the right. All right, so converting from a decimal to a percent, you would move your decimal places 2 to the right. And over here, when you convert from a percent to a decimal, you're going to move your decimal point 2 places to the left. All right, so going from decimal to percent, you move it to the right 2 places. Going from percent to decimal, you move it to the left 2 places. All right, or if you want to use this method here, dividing it out, you can do that as well, or the previous method that was on the previous slide, you can do that as well. Either way works, and they both give you the same exact answer. All right, let's look at writing 3/5 as a percent. How are we going to write 3/5 as a percent? All right, well, first thing we can do is we know that a percent can be written as some number over 100, right? Some number over 100. If you remember in 2 examples ago, 20 over 100 was 20%. So if we want to know how to write 3/5 as a percent, you can simply say 3 over 5 equals x over 100. All right, we can set up this proportion. 3/5 equals x over 100. Now, when you have a proportion, you simply cross multiply. So when you cross multiply, we get 5x equals 300. And now we're just going to solve for x. Divide 5, divide 5. So x equals 300 over 5. 300 divided by 5 is 60. All right. So 3/5 written as a percent is 60%. So 3/5 equals 60%. All right. 3/5 written as a percent is 60%. All right. So anytime you have a fraction that you want to convert to a decimal, anytime you have a fraction you want to convert to a percent, simply multiply it by x over 100. If we wanted, say, 2/3 written as a percent, we would simply take it as well and multiply it by x over 100. Then you'd cross multiply. So you'd have 3x equals 200. Divide by 3. Divide by 3. So x would equal 200 divided by 3, which I'm going to see if you can get it. You should be able to. It's not that hard. If you said 66.67%, you are correct. All right, so anytime you have a fraction that you want to convert to a percent, simply set it equal to x over 100, cross multiply, and solve for x, and that is your percentage. All right. What about if we had a percent that we wanted to change into a fraction? How are we going to take a percentage and change it into a fraction? Well, here's how we do that. What you want to do is you want to take your 28%, like we have, and write it as 28 over 100. All right, you want to take it and write it as 28 over 100. Now, what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to set up your fraction. You're going to want to factor your top and factor your bottom. So 28 will go down to 7 times 4. Well, 7 times 4 will go to 2 times 2. So you want to factor it all the way down. You don't want to leave any numbers here that are not prime. You want to factor it all the way down. So 28 is 7 times 2 times 2. 100 is 50 times 2, which is 25 times 2, which 25 is 5 times 5. So this would be 5 times 5, which is 25, times 2, which is 50, times 2, which is 100. All right. Now that we have this written as our factors of 28 divided by our factors of 100, we can simply cancel out like terms. So this 2 and this 2 will cancel. This 2 and this 2 will cancel. And now since nothing else will cancel, this equals 7 over 25. So 28% written as a simplified fraction is 7 over 25. All right. Now, I want you to try one. All right. I want you to write, let's see, what do I want to give you? 58% as a simplified fraction. All right, so pause the video for a few minutes or however long it takes you. Write 58% as a simplified fraction. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to write this as 58 over 100. And if you remember from last example, the 100 is simply 5 times 5 times 2 times 2. Now 58 will divide down to 29 times 2. And 29 is actually a prime number. So this is going to break down to 29 times 2. This 2 and this 2 will cancel out. So this equals 29 over 5 times 5, which is 25, times 2, which is 50. All right. So 58% written as a simplified fraction is 29 over 50. All right. 29 over 50. All right. I hope you gained a lot from this video. Converting decimals to percentages, converting percentages to decimals, and taking percentages and writing them as simplified fractions. We also took fractions and wrote them as decimals. All right. See you in class tomorrow.